Hello, my name is David Byrne. Thank you for joining me today as we discuss ongoing issues in America as well as their solutions. Today, we're talking about how America is supporting war crimes around the world, and they're doing it when there's a law against it. We're going to talk about the shortcomings under the Leahy Law and our support for human rights violations. But what is the Leahy Law? The Leahy Law is meant to prevent the U.S. from giving weapons to foreign military units where evidence of war crimes are present. It relies on the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of State to block any transfers of weapons to those units where we know that they are committing war crimes. But these aren't the war crimes that you normally think. It's a very specific list, and that's part of the problem that we're going to get into. Feel free to pause and read some of the notes on the screen. We're going to talk about the problems with the Leahy Law. Leave vetting is the process where a unit is determined to be eligible for weapons shipments. The problem is a military unit, I was in the military, and a company is the smallest unit in the military. It's 100 people. In special units, they are smaller, but in standard, they're 100 people. The military has 300,000 individuals in it. And the problem is, our military has $3.2 trillion in missing assets under management. So what does that mean? That means a one unit, 100 people, can get equipment, but easily just lose it. And it ends up in the hands of a unit that wasn't allowed to have it. Wouldn't be the first time, again, our military is missing $3.2 trillion in assets under management. Can't track it down. So that's one problem. It targets individual units, not entire branches of the military. What is assistance? Assistance really is just direct aid, free weapons, but it doesn't include weapons sales, joint exercises, or others. And plus, there's entire exceptions for things like the Afghanistan Security Fund, where we knew that their military, because of the war crimes they've committed on a regular basis, would never qualify for aid. And so we just exempted them. It's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. What is credible information for the Leahy Law to say, hey, this unit is committing war crimes? We need to stop giving them weapons. Well, the problem is that's up to the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of State. But those are appointed positions by the president. So they work for him, but yet they're enforcing Congress's will, but with this law. So the problem is because the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense are nominated and work for the president, if labeling a unit as committing a war crime would conflict with the president's political agenda, they'll just never label it as such. It's that simple. They're like, oh, we need more evidence. The evidence is not conclusive. There's conflicting evidence. They just make it up. It's terrible. And then there's the issues with the ambiguity with the Leahy Law. Units, again, I talked about this. It's too small. One unit's 100 people out of an entire military that you're going to restrict. It's ridiculous. The law only says that it has to be at the unit. That you can only restrict weapons transfers to the unit that committed the violation. One of the biggest problems with this law is, we have embassies around the world that are meant to further our diplomatic mission. But no one in those embassies can even invoke the Leahy Law. They can't say, hey, we see war crimes. There's no means for them to say, hey, we see war crimes happening. We're here on the ground. We need to restrict it. Oh, it has to go to the Secretary of State. And lastly, and perhaps most egregiously, excessive civilian harm is not even included in the war crimes list. Even though it is considered a war crime, it's not included in the Leahy Law as a means or a reason to restrict weapons transfers. So what are we going to do? And I apologize if we seem rushed, but I value your time and I want to keep these videos moving. We need to change the definition of restrictions on assistance to include joint exercises, military arms sales, all non-critical functions. When I say non-critical, I mean keep lines of communication open. But just limiting to free assistance that we're giving them and not restricting their arms sales, that's wrong. We need to seriously assess why we're still allowing them to buy weapons. We need to expand the restriction to entire branches of the military for violations by their units. A general does not care that 100 of his people were maybe he cares a little bit, but 100 of his people can't receive US weapons. So what? He'll just have this other unit lose a couple and they'll get him anyways. He doesn't care. You want a general to care? You want a general to actually do something? If a unit inside of a branch of a military commits a war crime violation, the entire branch of that military should be barred from receiving any US assistance. Immediately, that general will care. Under the Leahy Law, there's already a way that if you're making efforts towards rectifying the situation, then you can continue to receive assistance. So if you make it to the entire branch, then immediately upon restricting the delivery of weapons, that general is going to say that commander is no longer in command, and that all of those troops are no longer in a combat status. They were reprimanded to administrative duties pending an investigation. Immediate effect when you put it on the entire branch. And then, as long as the general does that, he could, in the exact same day, US aid can continue to flow. Something I would like to see changed is allow any senior foreign service representative in an embassy to file a allegation of a war crimes violation against a branch of the military that in the country that they are in, and that would immediately trigger a 30-day temporary restriction on weapons sales to that country, pending an independent investigation and review of the allegations. Now, who are the senior foreign service? These are general equivalents for the military, but they work for the State Department, right? They're equivalent to generals. These are not just anybody. So you basically have a general saying, I witnessed war crimes violations. And we're going to empower them to say, okay, we're going to pause for 30 days, up to 30 days, and we're going to have an independent review. The independent review could finish in 1 day, could finish in 12 hours, but we're going to restrict for 30 days pending that review. And no more weapons transfers, no more anything. We're going to empower our people on the ground. People we trust with our diplomacy, we're also going to say, we trust you to make a decision on whether we should continue to determine whether we should continue to supply weapons. And if they abuse this, sure, we can fire them. Empower the people on the ground, people who don't have a political stake in this. Take it out of the hands of the Secretary of State, the President. This law was passed by Congress. We cannot have it embroiled in the whims of presidential appointees, the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense. Those two literally are appointed by the president. Finally, the Leahy Law should apply to military branches that inflict excessive human or civilian casualties. If 90% of civilian deaths with American weapons, or just their own weapons, are civilian casualties, then they don't deserve US weapons and aid. So I hope with this, please like, subscribe. I hope I've opened your eyes to ways we can change the Leahy Law in a way that would really have a positive effect on US foreign policy and really enable the US to make a positive difference in the world. Please follow, like, and subscribe so that the people who can actually make a difference and vote on these issues can see this video and consider making a positive change for American foreign policy. Thank you.